Now we're here in our zucchini field, and as you can see on this plant, we have different varying degrees of maturity of the fruit. Right down here at the bottom, you can see there's a new flower bud. This will eventually start to look like this, which is a little bit more open. And then you can see, if you look closely on the back of this bloom, there's a really small zucchini, and that will eventually look like this. And this zucchini itself is only about a few days away from being ready to be picked. We want them to be, we call these fancy zucchini, so they're smaller, but that's what's most popular. They do get a little bit bigger, and we'll pick them a little bit larger. We'll pack mediums and larges, but the majority of what we pick is only a little bit larger than what you see here. The plants themselves, from the time that you have a small bud like this one at the bottom until you have a zucchini that's ready to be picked, is only about 2 weeks. So it's a little bit faster process than what we have in strawberries. For squash, yellow crookneck squash that we grow, and for zucchini that we grow, bees are a very important process. They're a crucial piece of the puzzle to making sure that we grow good squash that's the quality that you see in the grocery store. If the flower doesn't get pollinated by a bee, then you won't have a fruit that gets to be the size that you need it to be to pick. Many times what happens is the little squash that you see behind this bloom will just rot before it ever grows or gets any size. Sometimes half of the fruit will grow and the other half will rot. So it's really important that we have the bees in the field, that we make sure that our plants are getting pollinated so that we have a crop at the end of the day that we can harvest. It's also important to make sure we're delivering the appropriate amount and the right nutrients to the soil. The big three that we're mainly concerned with is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those are the most important parts of the fertilizer that we deliver to the plant through the drip tape under the plastic, because we know that if the soil is healthy and the plants are healthy, we'll have healthy bodies.
I love that Jake's able to pop around and show us so much of your farm. He knows his stuff for sure. One of the questions that's come in a lot is, what are the differences in the way that you grow squash versus strawberries? Melissa, can you give that a shot?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And, you know, farming is definitely not a one-size-fits-all thing. So everything down to the fact that we plant squash from a seed, to that we plant strawberries from a plant that's already been established. Squash grows really quickly, so the plant will mature very quickly, its fruit will mature very quickly, whereas a strawberry plant takes much longer to get to that point. So, you know, that's a big difference. We grow them in different seasons, so they need different types of weather, different types of conditions, and then even you know, the fruit they produce, strawberries are very, very perishable. We have to ship them very quickly. Squash, you have a little bit more time. They're a little bit more hardy, can sustain a little bit longer. So very different. And I think that's part of what keeps it interesting, is that we do different things all year. So adds a little change of pace.
Yeah. Well, we hope that that Charlotte, North Carolina, Blythe Elementary is watching, because Jennifer Almeida, you had a great question. I'm really interested in this one too. Bob, can you answer, what are the ideal weather conditions for your crops to grow?
Well, there's two different weather requirements for the crops that we grow. First, let's talk about strawberries. Strawberries like cool weather, especially at the beginning of the season, when the plants are beginning established and they're growing, like this plant is. They like the cold weather, and that makes the plant begin to form strawberries and blooms and forms. And during the bulk of the season, the cool weather makes the berries big and firm and sweet. So strawberries like cool weather. Squash, on the other hand, likes warm weather. It grows faster, it develops quicker, and the season comes off faster, and so it'll handle the warm weather better. But they all like dry weather. Here in Florida, it can get humid sometimes, and that causes problems with the diseases. So whenever it rains, it creates more of a fungus and a disease problem for us. So we like it dry, especially since we have the fertigation now. We can apply whatever water is necessary.
Wonderful. More questions coming right in here. Let's do Mrs. O'Neill's class from Prado View Elementary. Hi guys, thanks for joining. Melissa, what's the hardest crop to grow and why?
Great question. Yeah, kind of along with what my dad was saying, I would definitely say strawberries. They're really finicky. They're very sensitive. The berries are very perishable, so they're most sensitive to weather and nutrients. You know, talking about weather, there's nothing worse than right in the middle of strawberry season hearing a torrential downpour of rain, because what you're envisioning is every single one of those raindrops is putting a bruise on the strawberry. And so, you know, by the time that strawberry gets to a consumer like you to eat, it's going to be mush. So because they are so sensitive, so perishable, so fragile, they're pretty difficult. They're also really susceptible to disease, like my dad mentioned. So they really take a lot of time, effort, planning, and care to make sure we get you the best possible strawberry that we can get you.
It's really fascinating. I don't think about these things. You know, sometimes you go to the store, there they are, but really, really interesting stuff. Well, you guys, I haven't been able to stump you yet, but I promise I'm going to try. I'm going to give you a break for a few minutes because I'd like to welcome Amy. Come on over, Amy. And Amy, you are the Florida Regional Representative for Nutrients for Life, correct?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So you have a hands-on demonstration to show today?
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Yes. So I work for a foundation called Nutrients for Life, and we are all about telling people, educating folks, students, teachers, people in the community about responsible fertilizer use and how it's completely tied to feeding a growing population. So I do have a little demonstration.
Wonderful. I'm
from
going to
some
get
girls
out of here because
Okay.
I see you've got students lined up. That's
Absolutely.
my favorite part, is getting students on camera. Come on in, guys.
Okay.
I'll see you in a few minutes.
Thanks so much. So we have Ashley, Erica, and Laurel. And where are you guys from?
We're from Turner Bartels K through 8.
Okay, Turner Bartels K through 8. Thank you so much for joining us today. And so we're going to talk to you a little bit today about the ways in which people use the land that we have available here on Earth. So before we get started with the apples, I just want you to brainstorm a little bit. What are some ways that people use the land available here on Earth?
Well, they can use the land mostly for farming and stuff. Farming, cropping.
Okay, farming, growing crops, that's great, Laurel. Anybody else?
They can use it for housing or schools.
Absolutely. Places to live, places to go to school. Ashley, what do you think?
They can use it for, let's say, farming and crops.
Okay, again, food production. We've also got one thing that I didn't hear, industry, infrastructure, so your roads, places where manufacturing takes place. Also wildlife habitats, and when you think of places like desert, ice scapes, that sort of thing, those we consider to be wildlife habitats as well. So we're gonna take our apples, and our apple represents the whole world, okay? And real quickly, I just want you to, as I cut the apple, I'm going to cut it into 4 equal pieces, so quarters. And as I do that, will you girls please draw on your apple 4 equal sections. So we're going to cut our world in half, and then we're going to cut it into quarters, into 4 quarters. And as they're doing that, I want you to think about how much of the earth is available in land. So how much of earth is land? How much of earth is water? Ladies, any guesses here?
I'm gonna guess that 70% is water.
Okay, Laurel says about 70% is water. Erica or Ashley, do you guys have any?
I think 70 or 75%.
70, 75?
I think 70%.
Okay, 70%. These girls are really smart. So they're learning quite a bit at TB Bartlett. Yeah, so about 70% of the world is water, oceans, rivers, that sort of thing. So we're gonna take approximately 3/4 of our earth, and we're gonna just move it to the side. So you girls might draw an X on 3 of your quarters, because that's not able to be used. And then on the quarter that you decide to be land, you're going to cut it in half. So draw a line right down the middle of your land section. Move it to the side, or put an X on it. I'm going to move it to the side. That represents infrastructure, places where we live, where we go to school. It's not usable to grow food crops on, so we're not using that, okay? I want you to cut it in half. Cut the usable part again, cut that in half. Move it to the side. That represents wildlife habitat, that sort of thing. Again, we're not growing food there. And then one more time in half. So we've taken our quarter of land down to an eighth. We're going to move that to the side. And that represents places where we work, places where we recreate, you know, your soccer fields, that sort of thing. So we're not growing food there either. So now what we're left with is 1/32, and what I want you guys to do is on your portion that's left, do a 1/32, 1/32. That is 1/32 of the Earth's total surface. That represents the amount of land that we have to grow our food on. Now, as you're thinking about this, how many people do we have in the world right now? Ashley, guesses? How many folks we've got?
Over 7 billion?
Okay, over 7 billion. Erica, how about you?
Over 6 billion?
Over 6?
Say around 6 or 7 billion.
Okay, somewhere around 6 to 7 billion. These girls are really good. So yeah, right now on planet Earth, we are right around 7 billion folks. And that means that on 1/32 of the Earth's total surface, on an eighth of the land that we have, we are growing food for 7 billion people. That's a lot of zeros. So by 2050, it's really not that long from now, by the year 2050, how many people do you think we'll have?
10 billion?
10 billion? Okay.
Around 9 billion?
9?
More than 8 billion?
Okay, more than 8. Yeah, we're projected to have just over 9 billion people by the year 2050. And so that means that we're probably not going to get any more land to grow our food. And the skin of the apple, I don't know if you can see that, but the skin of the apple, how it's very thin, that represents the topsoil, the place where the plants actually grow. And so without very much land, without very much topsoil, it's becoming a bit of a challenge for our farmers and producers to produce enough food to feed the world. Before we go, I just want to hear any questions that y'all have.
I have one question. How does this relate to wildlife and humans?
Okay, so how does this relate to wildlife and humans? Well, humans and wildlife have the same amount of land to live on. And because wildlife needs a certain amount of land, and the increasing population of humans needs more and more land to live on, that means that we have to figure out how to grow food efficiently on this small amount of land that we do have.
What are the effects on soil?
So effects on soil. Soil is imperative. It's extremely important to plant health and food production. So in order for us to grow enough food on, again, this extremely small piece of land, we have to have healthy soil. And so it's really important, as Melissa and Bob and Jake were saying, that you have extremely healthy soils. And one of the ways that we do that is to amend the soils by adding fertilizer. You can think of fertilizer as sort of a vitamin for our soils.
Why is there only a small piece of land to do farming?
There's only a small piece of land to do farming, and that piece of land to do farming is getting smaller and smaller because our population is getting larger and larger, and those people need somewhere to live. So oftentimes they take up farmland. And again, that's why it's really important for us as agriculturalists, as producers and consumers to figure out how we can use land efficiently. All right, well, we are going to learn a little bit more about healthy soils and using land efficiently from Jared Parker. He is Hinton Farms agronomist, and he helps them keep their crops healthy and their soils going.